Support for Heart and Hand is brought to you by Manscaped, who, as you know, are the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Big news from Manscaped, they've just released their new cologne scent to help you feel good and smell good all over and at all times. Who knew smelling this good could feel this good too? Manscaped is trusted by over 2 million men worldwide, so join the movement for all your below-the-waist grooming needs. Everybody knows that Manscaped has the perfect package 3.0 for all of your below-the-waist grooming needs, but they didn't stop there. Now you can complete your grooming game with the new refined cologne signature scent by Manscaped. I have a bottle of this and it smells fantastic. It's calming, inviting, which is always a good thing if you're spraying it in certain places. And the signature scent introduces a light citrus burst before settling into anchoring notes of vetiver and a woodsy masculine finish. This 50ml spray cologne is even hypoallergenic, cruelty-free, dye-free, paraben-free and 100% vegan. I'm not quite sure what some of that means, but what I do know is that it smells great. And you get that manly feeling, no matter where you use your Manscaped to shave, of putting it on the freshly shorn skin and going rrrr into the mirror. We all do it, don't lie. So you can get 20% off and free shipping with the code Rangers at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping with the code Rangers at manscaped.com. So, Rangers, use the code, look good, smell good, feel good with Manscaped. Hello everyone, my name's David Edgar. I'm the host of Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast, and delighted to be back with you this week. Joining me to discuss not the most memorable game that you'll ever watch is Alex Staff. Good afternoon, Alex.
Hello, David. It's all been good?
You wait all weekend for a game, and
right.
you know, and then the Sunday at 12. We didn't lose.
No.
Yeah. Thanks, folks. Right, we'll be back next Monday with loads of different factors, I think, to get into. But the performance itself probably wouldn't require an awful lot of analysis. I watched it back this morning, Monday as we record, and often. You do it as well. I know that you watch the games back, and often you miss something because when you're watching it, there's the tension, and you're not sure of the result, etc., etc. So you watch it back, and you're sort of focused on stuff. And generally, there are things you've missed, or we were a bit better than I remember, or whatever. But I can't, in all honesty, say that. I think that there was a real paucity about the performance from start to finish, literally to finish yesterday. That I think, given the reaction of the manager and Allan McGregor, probably was as much of a shock to the team as it was to us watching.
It looks like it, yeah. And that was. I'm sure we'll discuss that in further detail. But that starting team, I know a lot of people talk about the rotation, but the starting team was mostly players that we've been relying upon all season. 9 of the 11, you would argue, would be regular starters for us. So. I can't imagine Gerrard expected that, or even something close to that, from the team. I think it's pretty clear Allan McGregor never expects that, or certainly never accepts that.
Accepts, yes.
He's not a fan of that sort of thing at all, is he?
No.
And there was a guy who played out his skin yesterday.
That
was a cracking performance from McGregor. Not just a couple of good saves all round, just brilliant. And he's absolutely raging at the end of the game, which sums up his kind of attitude towards it all. It was, very unexpected, David, although I think somebody has pointed out that the 4 draws this season have all been 12 o'clock kickoffs, so you were joking during the game that we don't wake up to 12:30. I'm starting to wonder if there's something going on there. Has this Rangers squad got the same attitude towards early kickoffs as yourself, essentially?
Look, that's, I think, a legit point, because, as you say, that's 4 matches we've dropped points in this season, which is remarkable, given that it's February and we've won the rest of them. But they have all been these Sunday 12 o'clock kickoffs, and there is a flatness to them. I've been fortunate enough to be at some of the games this season, and it is odd because you've got the stillness that we all are experiencing when we're outside at the moment. The world is a very, very surreal place at the moment. But I don't know why, but it does even feel different a Sunday at 12 than a Saturday at 3, or even the evening games. And they're all a little bizarre because you get, the people are warming up. You've got the full stadium. The stadium goes as normal, if you like. There's the announcements of the team, and the announcers still do it in number 1, Allan McGregor. They do that still. You've got the music blaring as the players warm up. So there's still that noise. And then the game kicks off and it's silence, bar shouts from the actual players. And that's bizarre. But there is something even eerier, I would say, about a Sunday 12 o'clock kickoff, whether or not it's just that sort of ambience that a Sunday has. And that's a difficult thing to try and explain because it's a difficult, it's very much an abstract concept. You can't feel it or touch it. It does feel to me as a layman and just somebody watching, it feels different. And you look at reasons for certain performances maybe not being up. Of the 4 matches, I would say that this was by far the worst performance. Livy, Rangers didn't get going, and there's the plastic pitch element to that. But it was early in the season. Roof wasn't quite up to speed yet. There was guys settling in. So, okay, and it can happen at Livy. Motherwell was a slow start, and I think that the team recovered in the second half and just got a goal and couldn't get the second. But there was definite improvement in that second half. Hibs, Rangers should have won that game. It was actually, an offside goal, defensive mistakes. But even then, we made chances. Again, though, in the first half, Rangers, sluggish start. And yesterday, probably for the first time, a sluggish start. That wasn't new, but it continued. It continued into the second half.
Yeah, we could just never get out of it. And you kept waiting, because we've seen it a few times this season. Slightly slow start, as you say, and especially in those games, all of those games that you mentioned, even to some extent Livingston, very slow start. We did kind of up the tempo, but it just felt as though we left it too late in that one. And as you say, Livingston, as we know, can be difficult on that pitch. But yeah, it's not a surprise that Hamilton had more shots against us, more shots in target against us than any other team domestically this season in that game yesterday. It really was a game where McGregor had to be good to keep it down to 1. And I know that one came right at the very last second, and almost it would have felt like robbery any other day apart from on Sunday, where it felt like, let's be honest, the very least that Hamilton deserved in the game. They deserved at least a point, and it would have been utter robbery if we came away with all 3, I think.
Yeah, that's the thing. Usually with a game you get a load of disparate opinions, but everyone I've spoken to has included the phrase, well, they deserved at least a point. We didn't deserve it. And you're right, had they scored after 25 minutes and then we'd get a draw, it wouldn't have felt as bad. But when you concede literally in the 93rd and 59th minute of a 94-minute game, you're going to feel like you've been kicked in the stones a little bit. The 12 o'clock thing is potentially becoming a thing. It's something I'm sure they're looking at. I'm sure they're aware of it because, they look at everything. And players, I think it was Wayne Rooney that spoke about hating the really early kickoffs because he just didn't feel his body was attuned to it, because throughout his career, obviously, growing up, you play at certain times, and he said your preparations change, etc. So it's clearly a universal thing among footballers. But then Hamilton started well. Hibs started well, Motherwell started well in 3 of those matches. So there was a 12 o'clock kickoff against Aberdeen. We won 4-0 and played well at half time. So again, that just complicates it. But I'm sure it's something that they'll look at. But I want to talk about the team selection because a lot of talk about it. Now, I'll be honest, I rolled out my bed at 10 to 12 and really just saw the team as we're getting ready. And I was surprised to see Bongani Zungu in it. I didn't expect that. But there's been a lot of focus. The manager himself said, got the quote here, he said, I left too much personality on the bench. By that he means Ryan Jack, Stephen Davis, and the drive they give Rangers, which is key, which is important, especially Stephen Davis this season. I think that Stephen Davis is a leader on the park. I think we can see that. He's maybe not a shouting baller, but he drives him on, and I think maybe to an extent that sometimes gets overlooked. But it was the wrong team because it didn't get the result. But you nailed it there when you said 9 of those players are regular starters. Cedric Keaton came in, Alfie suspended, and he's come off the bench and shown up well. So it's not that big a surprise. The only real surprise in the selection was Bongani Zungu. And he didn't play particularly well, and we'll come to that about his future. But even so, and I'm not excusing the manager there because clearly when Davis and Jack came on, we were better. Suggest one of them should have played, but it was really just one change that I think was up for debate, really. And yeah, afterwards you can say, well, Hadji was rotten, I would have gone with. But there was only really one that I think was an eyebrow raiser. That doesn't, for me, excuse the other outfield players.
No, and if anything, really, in a kind of more normal circumstance, if it wasn't just rotation, say these guys had, say Itten and Zungu had, and in many ways Itten almost did have to come in. You could argue Roof could have started, but having just coming back from injury as well, Defoe wasn't available, Morelos wasn't available. In many ways he had to. If it was injuries that had caused these players to come in, guys who haven't started that many games this season, who are only getting little bits of time off the bench, haven't been given a chance to get up to speed. If it had been injuries that had forced them in rather than rotation, you might have had a little bit more sympathy for them on the day. You might have been saying, well, to be honest, I'm not really that surprised they struggled a bit because they've not had enough time this season to really get themselves up to speed. You might have argued that. Now, that's up for debate. That's debatable, right? Because some players have shown that doesn't matter. I think Ryan Jack, for example, recently coming back from as long out as he has been, it looks as though he's not missed a beat when he's come back into the team. So that's not entirely an excuse. I'm just saying, from that perspective, you might have had more sympathy for them. And before the game, Gerrard did mention, obviously he's got to manage Ryan Jack's injury now, and I think that's going to be a long-term thing. Well, hopefully not, but
I agree.
It starts to look like it now, doesn't it? And Davis had just started 12 games in a row, and Gerrard used the phrase has went above and beyond. Now we know that we use a lot of data around our players, a lot of statistics to see how many minutes have they done recently, what sort of distance have they covered, etc. And I suspect that he felt as though starting Davis was an injury risk. Or had been advised that it had a good chance of being.
Is it pitch? I mean, that something that we all look back to that Jamie Murphy injury, and is there a case because no Roof, again someone who we know has needed managed, no Balogun, someone again who's needed managed, Jack Simpson even on the bench, that maybe the manager does think, okay, in this game it's a plastic pitch, no point taking any risk, which is understandable, incidentally. I'm not going to go at him for it.
Yeah.
And again, I keep going back to, when I looked at that team, while I was surprised to see Zungu in it, I didn't panic. I thought, that team's got more than enough for Hamilton Ackies.
Yeah, and we were kind of excited by it and starting as well because it feels as though he's deserved it. His issue has been that, apart from maybe one start in the kind of handful that he's had, that sadly his sub appearances have been more impressive than his starts so far. He's rapidly gone down what Nacho Novo used to do. A couple of years into his time with us, suddenly he became a super sub, and any time he started, it just wasn't. He never had a great game. He needs to be. He needs a good 90 minutes sometime soon. But yeah, we were relatively fine. I didn't hear anybody complaining before the game. Let's just say that, David. No fan said before the game, "Oh, that's a mistake," or I'm a wee bit worried about this game after seeing the team. And we've heard that before plenty of times.
Yeah.
And it's proven to be incorrect or whatever. Yeah.
This wasn't like the Old Firm game, the 2-0 at the start of last season, where everybody saw the team and went, "Oh," and the manager said, it was the wrong team, he got it wrong, and he did. I think yesterday that team should, and in retrospect, he got it wrong because we didn't get the result, we didn't play well, but I still think that to focus on one player, because it wasn't like he made 8 changes to that side, right? League Cup, he over-rotated, 100%. I don't think that was the case yesterday. The team just collectively didn't play well. On Zungu, though, he said hypocritically after saying let's not focus on him. He is on loan. Trying to get, obviously with you would assume wants the deal made permanent, and he hasn't had a lot of minutes. He's been sent on to do a very specific job, and as one wag put it yesterday, the problem was we didn't have Eaton and Zungu to come off the bench and run. That's very good at helping us over the line. He's 28 years old. I think Zungu's a good player. I'm just not sure he's what we need. And that's not a slight on him. That's just given that, we don't, in an ideal world, you'd love to have certain players for every occasion, every position, for if you need cameos at the end of a game, but we have to cut our cloth accordingly. And do you think at this moment it looks as though he is going to be around for next season, or if it's just, square peg, round hole type thing?
I'm not willing to write him off. I don't think I don't like to judge any player this early into within the first year, 18 months.
But you kind of have to in terms of making you put. I know what you mean, and the likes of say Hadji or whatever. You give time to develop, but he's not our player. He's a loan player, and we need to make a decision about whether to spend the money and give the contract to him, or do we get better value, more of what we need elsewhere with that money?
No, you're right. And that's fair. And as you pointed out, you're talking about somebody who has played at a decent level in France. He's an internationalist. He's 28 years of age, and he's essentially been given almost like an extended trial with us, with this loan deal. That's what these are almost like in many ways. Now, it hasn't been ideal because of the time it took during the transfer window to get him in. Then he has to go in quarantine. Then he's way behind because he wasn't, he hadn't done a full pre-season with his old team because of the COVID situation and being stuck in South Africa for a while. So there was all of that holding him back, and I get that. But at this stage, it is difficult to see him being a player that will be retained. Certainly, if Rangers are going to sign him, reported fees of £3 million, I think we'd be trying to negotiate that down. I don't think we'd be willing to spend that much on him for somebody at his age and the level that he's shown for us so far. So, if Gerrard has seen more of him and does want him to hang around, I think we'll do similar to what we did with Hadji and speak to him and try and get that price to come down because, he's not valued at that sort of cash, especially with only a year left in his contract after this one as well. I would say this though, David, and I don't know if people always say that you need competition in a squad to get the best out of everyone. If Zungu coming in has meant that Davis has played as well as this, because he's looking over his shoulder thinking, if I don't show up, this guy's going to come and get a game instead of me. If that's stepped up Davis's level, if it's stepped up Kamara's level, and both of them have been excellent this season, then for a loan deal, that's kind of been worthwhile then, hasn't it?
Oh yeah, 100%. People do sometimes think that they'll point at someone and say, it was a flop, but you're right, that can happen. I joke, but Dan Egan,
yes.
the man who won us the treble in 02-03, couldn't get near the team because Moore and Amoruso were sensational. So he was brought in, as cover and competition, and if it pushes people on to a higher level, that's great. But then it's just, as you say, when you're coming to spend the money, but I need somebody that... If you like that, he's been here and he's provided that competition, but clearly he's lost the competition,
yes.
And the other guy is always getting picked ahead of him. So I need someone to come in now, and it might be a phobe, the youngster from Bournemouth. I need somebody to come in, if you like, and restart the competition, because at the moment the midfielders know that they have won it. It's interesting. As I say, I think he's a good player. I'm just not necessarily sure his game is exactly what we need at times. I think that he definitely does have a role. He's neat and tidy. He's great at retaining possession. Came on, did well, I thought, against Hibs the previous weekend. He came in and St Johnstone and helped close it down. But in games, you maybe need to build more rather than perhaps that sort of thing. God, I remember all the way back to Advocates' time. You never saw Derek McInnes near a league game, but see in Europe, when Rangers wouldn't have as much of the ball and there would be other tasks needed, he brought in PSV famously and did very well. So, interesting. We'll have to see what the summer brings with that one. Moving on then to the actual display itself. The front players did not play well at all yesterday. Kent, Aribo, Hadji, Eaton. I felt a bit sorry for Big Cedric, I'll be honest, because I don't think that it was going to be easy for him. I think that there was a huge gap between him and anyone else that we don't often see with us. It's not like us. Second half, I thought we improved a wee bit, but Hamilton played a system that there was space in behind on the flanks, and we never exploited it. We did a bit in the second half, and got a goal from it, but there has been some chat about the form of Ryan Kent, and Ryan Kent does a lot of stuff even when he's not, necessarily playing at his best, but his form has been patchy since the turn of the year. It would be remiss of us to say otherwise. And I'm a huge Ryan Kent fan. Anyone who listens to this knows that.
Yeah, he's still an inconsistent player at this stage in his career. I don't think there's any doubt there. His contribution this season has been much better than the previous two, and that's what you can expect, gradual improvement. But he's not quite at that stage yet. Annoyingly with Kent, for me anyway, he should have scored probably one, if not two. You'll remember the pass that Ryan Jack played to him in the second half. That was a great chance. I'm pretty sure, I haven't had a chance to rewatch it all yet, but pretty sure he had a good chance first half as well, Ryan Kent. And then obviously at the start of the second half, he looked as though he was finally getting in behind, and that ball over the top was starting to kind of work, because as you said, Hamilton were happy to push up a little bit. And he was the one player of the forward players that we've got that's got that explosive pace to get beyond a guy, on the run. Atton's not got that, Hadji's not got that, Aribo's not got that. They've got different strengths. But Kent was starting for the first 10 minutes of the second half. I'm thinking, okay, we're finally getting just that simpler ball over the top. Sometimes you just need to do that for a bit of a game, get yourself ahead, turn their defence, and then you can start to kind of play your football. But obviously it didn't work. And I'll be honest, David, as much as we started the second half a bit better, after about 10-15 minutes, Hamilton started to create the good chances, didn't they? I mean, they were... And McGregor, that's when he had to step up and make the saves that he was making.
Oh, the double save. The save in the first half was amazing, but the double save I thought was, we talk about players because we look at ages, and sometimes we shouldn't. Yes, he's 38, 39, but the save, the reaction to get to the second one, there's a lot of goalkeepers in their 20s will never have reactions like that.
Yeah, he's not went down an inch. You're supposed to, as you say, hit these kind of late 30s. That's just what we're used to growing up when we were watching football, wasn't it, David? When players weren't as looked after or are able to look after themselves as well as they can now. So we're kind of, even with goalkeepers, it was very rare. There were some who could go into their 40s, but it was still quite rare that they went there and were as good. Some of them fell off a cliff, but were still just good enough to kind of get by. McGregor's not missing a beat. And it's kind of hard to imagine anytime soon that it's going to happen either. He's not had to do an awful lot this season, let's be honest. We've defended really well. But when he's been asked, he's been excellent in the games where he's had to be. He was the only player yesterday that could feel aggrieved at that last minute goal, really, wasn't he? He was the only one. Everybody else, to be honest, should have all been looking about going, we deserved that.
I'd exempt the subs who came on, but the rest, I think, there wasn't a single starter. And Aribo frustrates me because he's got so much ability. And at the moment, it's every so often we're seeing it, whereas I look at the physical build he has, the talent he has, the vision he has, and you do look at a game like that and say, you should be dominating that, because there are times you can't get the ball off him, and he's got this amazing ability to glide past people, to win a ball back in circumstances, and I think that's why people get frustrated with him, because with some players it's just, what do you expect? That's as good as they are. I don't think that's the case with him. And he's had a bit of a stop-start season, but he has still run in the team lately. And I think, again, it feels like you're singling somebody out on a day that it was a collective shocker. But maybe we are a wee bit harsh on the likes of him and Kent, because we know they're better than that.
We do. We have higher expectations of them because of their abilities. And they've got to have higher expectations of themselves, and I'm sure they do, to be honest. With Aribo, it kind of goes back to for me anyway, this is my opinion on it. It goes back to what I was saying with Ken earlier. These are guys, when you consider the age that they're at, 22, 23, 24. Hadji falls into this category as well. Cedric Itten's in this category. Glenn Kamara as well, round about that age. We've got a number of these guys who are quite important to us, but they haven't quite hit those years of their career yet where they're consistent. Is it any real surprise, or is it any coincidence that McGregor, Davis, Goldson, Tavernier, Arfield, Jack, guys who are all late 20s and their 30s, are the guys who have been most consistent for us this year, the guys who have really stepped up? And that's, I think that's why we've got a core of good young players. I still say young. I know people would have an issue with that when they're 23, 24, but I would still class them as relatively young players. And they've got a few years to go yet before they're going to be at their consistent best. We've seen this before with players. The difference these days, as compared to the last few years, is we've got good players around them now. Whereas a few years ago, if you think back to the days of Windass, etc., Barry Mackay, guys like that, we didn't have anybody around them to help them through, help them through that stage. So, well, we're in a good place this season with that, or this squad with that now. But I just think we should have higher expectations of them, but I think we should always caveat it with just a little bit of, okay, they're not going to be brilliant all the time. However, they do need to start working towards something that's a bit more consistent than we've seen in the past few months, especially from Aribo, I would say, who there can be games, you're right, he works hard and he can be really good off the ball, but then there are other games when it's not working on the ball where you think you're not doing enough of it either. You can never put that on a Ryan Kent,
That's true.
If Kent's not having a good game on the ball, he's still absolutely working hard off it. There are times where you watch Aribo and you think you've not tracked your man there, or just certain little things that he's not doing. You think to yourself, right, okay, if you're not going to have a good game for us on it, go and do your job elsewhere and let somebody else go and take over for us in the attacking sense. And I think of those players, he's the one that can be. I'm not saying he's terrible at it before anybody has a go. Definitely not. And I've defended him for this at earlier points in the season in other pods. But I don't think he's, of the players I've mentioned, I think he's the one that's the weakest at that side of it. And that's the sort of level, that's the thing he needs to do a bit more of. He had one moment in the game on Sunday, David, the one that he had the shot that went just wide in the first half. Aside from that, it was kind of hard to see what else he was doing, even from a kind of defensive sense as well, in terms of, being a bit stronger for us there and keeping his... Because Hamilton created, as I say, a lot of chances, so we obviously had some issues there, and it was harder to see what he was doing that way. So yeah, you're right. It's sometimes unfair the way that we focus on them, but they've brought it on themselves in many ways with the level of performance that they've shown that they're capable of. So they're going to have to just accept it and should be working themselves towards trying to bring that more often.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Defensively, I thought Rangers, who have clearly had a fantastic defence this season, were awful the whole match. I'm a Helander guy, right? For me, our first choice defence is the defence that played yesterday. Yeah. If everybody's fit, I'm a Helander guy. But he does not look comfortable on these pitches. It really is that simple. I don't know if it's in his head or whatever, but his positioning was bad. He was letting the ball bounce, which, as any Scottish schoolboy will tell you, is what you're told from infancy.
Yes.
You know that before you know the alphabet. You never let the ball bounce. He was out of position a lot. He had a terrible game, but I don't think any of the rest had a good game. And the goal itself is an absolute debacle of a thing. Now, we've won a lot of games by a single goal. So clearly we are good at seeing out games. And we've sat on this show and we've praised them after certain matches, saying I thought that we saw the game over the line very, very well. Celtic at Ibrox springs to mind. Hibs even last week springs to mind. Goodness, St Johnstone, if you want to only go back to the last game. So it's not all the time. However, that's now 3 matches that we've conceded with virtually the last kick of the ball. 2 of them after either equalising or getting what should be a late winner in those matches, and we've gone to sleep and conceded a goal very late on. I'm talking, of course, about Benfica away, St Mirren in the League Cup, and then yesterday. And the goal itself was terrible. Why is Stephen Davis at right back in the 94th minute? Why is nobody tracking runners from midfield? And I think Aribo was guilty of that. He wasn't in the picture. Why is nobody in the centre of defence picking up the one Hamilton striker? It's a goal with, as Adam would put it, our tactics guy, several points of malfunction in it. So I'm not picking anybody out. But again, it's one of those ones where you say, you weren't in the right positions, you weren't set, you weren't alive to the danger, and it's happened before. And this isn't just us, because going on Allan McGregor's reaction yesterday, he wasn't best pleased with what he just witnessed either.
No, he certainly wasn't. And it was more than just the fact that he hates losing a goal, wasn't it? He was already... He was... If he'd put that header around the post, as he's obviously tried to do with the save, and it went out for the corner, he would have gave exactly the same reaction to the team, because he was absolutely fuming with what had transpired to create the chance in the first place. I would get back just a minute before that, David. I felt, okay, so we were trying to see the game out, and there was a couple of times around about the 92nd minute where there was clearly a shot on for a couple of people, and they would turn out of it and try and play something else, or try and play safe plays in the corner. And sometimes that's the way to go. But I was kind of thinking, it's only 1-0, it's Hamilton. I don't mean that disrespectfully to them, but why not just have the pop here? Because we didn't keep the ball at the last second anyway. So sometimes it just seemed like, for example, Scott Wright, do you remember that moment in the game where he's driving at the box and he's got a bit of time and space? And I'm thinking he's going to hit it, and then he tries to play the ball out to Tavernier wide right and gives it away. I
think if it's not his debut,
yeah, he probably has.
Yeah, he probably goes on and does it. But he's, you're still at the fitness. I thought he looked sharp yesterday when he came on, and I dare say we'll see a wee bit more of him. Definitely. But it's I mean, and look, easy after the fact, because you're so annoyed and you don't even have the opportunity to sling the ball up and try and get away. It's that late in the game, and that drives you nuts. And it was the same at St Mirren. So you're just left there with that sort of empty feeling, and that's what happened to us all yesterday. Look, it was a terrible performance. Nobody at Rangers tried to sugarcoat it. None of us on here, and Alex and I are probably two of the most optimistic podders on Heart and Hand. We're not trying to sugarcoat it. However, one of the themes that I come back to is that social media can polarise opinions, where you find yourself that pushed into a camp. You have to be in one camp or another. You can't just have a middle ground. And there is a middle ground here, which is, you can say that yesterday was a terrible performance and a bad result, and it was, and still believe that the team have done fantastically well, that we're in a wonderful position, and that we'll rebound next week. Whereas I think that when people argue online, and it's maybe not the best place for nuance, as we know, that you tended to see people say, well, you've been far too harsh on the team, look where they are. And then you had other people saying, well, we're not allowed to criticise, is that it? Well, no, you can say, God, that was awful today, lads. But you can still say, however, having just looked at the league table and where we are and the games that we've got on ahead, it's a blip. Take the point, up the road, and move on.
Yeah, it's that kind of... This all seems to fall down when people don't really take that second to understand the perspective the other person's talking from. When people were being critical yesterday, they were talking from the perspective of that game. It was about the Hamilton game. It wasn't about the season overall. Maybe people were saying, we've had a few poor performances in a row. Arguable, yes. There's a bit of debate in there, but it's certainly an argument for that, and you can say that as well. But yeah, you're right. We all love, or certainly social media seems to give the impression that we all love an argument, and it was a bit daft yesterday, because I don't think anybody was. I think everybody pretty much agreed with each other, which was the crazy part about it. The performance was really disappointing. It was a really bad watch for us. Definitely, I think Allan McGregor nailed it right after the game. That's the worst we've been in quite a while. Possibly the worst we've been under Gerrard, actually. I'd say we played better against Hamilton in the game. They beat us 1-0 at Ibrox. Just
No,
about.
we made dozens of chances that night.
Yeah.
We just couldn't score.
Yeah, that was down to some absolute sitters and stuff.
See if we'd had a normal goalkeeper and lost that game 3-1, I honestly don't think we could have had any complaints yesterday. No. Really, because the not only the quality of chances that Hamilton carved out, it took top drawer saves to keep it level.
Yeah, and there'll be some people listening to that and thinking that's disgraceful or whatever against a team like Hamilton. It happens. There's been some top class Rangers sides have lost games to teams like that before. We know that. It was strange, as you said, David, on social media. Everybody's in the same camp, I think. We all realise this season's been really good. We were all a bit annoyed at the way the game went. Some people are a bit concerned about potential signs of complacency. I think that's a little early to judge, but I can see why some people would maybe go down that road. So yeah, there was no real reason for the debate. I think we could have all, for once, got together and just went, well, that was rubbish, wasn't it? And kind of moved on. But no, it's that's a bit too easy for Twitter. Really, you can't be doing that. It was one of those days. Really, as you said, if you're like the likes of me, or I'm going to give him a shout. I wouldn't normally do this, but Tags Bear on Twitter. I don't know if you know Tags, David. Maybe over the years.
Yeah, I know him from social media.
From social media.
He makes you look miserable.
Oh, exactly. I was going to say Tags is possibly the only person I know that's even more crazy that way at trying to find the positives all the time. But people like myself, we have to just take a wee step back sometimes and go, do you know what? This isn't about some sort of wider point all the time. Sometimes people are just venting because of a rubbish game, and everybody had that right yesterday because it was a rubbish game. So yeah, it was strange to see so much debate, but I think it all got overshadowed pretty quickly, David, with some of the stuff
that was going on last night on Twitter. But so look, it's in the record books. It's a point. I suppose if you can't win, don't lose. But obviously, with everyone keen to get this over the line as soon as possible, and not having a game this week is frustrating because you need to wait the full week. But we will welcome Kilmarnock at the weekend. New manager appointed there today, Tommy Wright. Not the sexiest name, Alex, but he knows what he's doing, and probably exactly what they need. So there'll be a challenge, but again, some of the you would think that we were playing Real Madrid on Saturday. It's Kilmarnock, struggling Kilmarnock at home. The team with a point to prove after yesterday. I'm expecting a reaction.
And we've seen this season examples of that already, David. That's the thing that I think a lot of people have kind of forgotten. We've had moments. You'll remember we had our games. We beat Dundee United 2-1 away from home, and it wasn't a great performance, if you remember. We then went to St Mirren and lost in the League Cup. And when Motherwell went 1-0 up at Ibrox in the next game, there were some panicking people. There were some fans thinking, "Uh-oh, this is looking like we're something's going wrong here." We turned that game around and we reacted well, and we went on a good run after that. We went on a really good run after the disappointment of the Hibs game. Even if you take something like, drawing the way that we did away to Benfica was disappointing. The next game, we put 8 past Hamilton. This squad's shown all season that they're capable of reacting to those bits of disappointment. I would be concerned if we don't see a reaction in the performance, David, I must admit. I don't think Kelly will make it easy. Tommy Wright's good at setting up a team, all that sort of stuff. And, they've got quite a bit to prove themselves because they've been terrible this season. But I expect it to be high tempo, players looking to prove a point. Even if it's only 1-0, 2-0, I still expect the performance to be better because ultimately that's what this team's done all season.
Early to say because, full week, you never know what will happen. We've got Kamaru's appeal to be heard tomorrow, so we don't know if he'll be available or whatnot. But would you anticipate I think if available for selection, I would expect to see Davis and Jack, for example, start at the weekend. But in terms of that front line, which, we haven't been scoring an awful lot of goals, Ross County apart, would you anticipate any changes or maybe a kind of rejig up there?
I think it would be harsh on Hadji to be dropped, but if Roof's available, Morelos isn't, is he? I couldn't remember if Morelos' suspension was 3 consecutive games or if it was one of those daft things where it's 2 games, then he's available for a game, then he's suspended for a game.
He's not available.
He's not available, yeah. So if Roof's appeal goes through, and hopefully that will, we might start with both Roof and Itten as such. And then I would see Hadji drop, because I think we all know Kent's not going to be dropped. That's just whether you believe he deserves it or not. Steven Gerrard will
but
play.
That's the difference in what would your team be and what will the team be.
Yes,
absolutely right. Kent will play, and I don't know if we'll see. I'm thinking more about Scott Wright possibly coming in for Hadji, but yeah, we'll have to wait and see. But just roll on. We have a series of home games coming up. Get them won, and then we're even closer. And I suppose that is just the frustration. Everybody just wants this done and dusted as soon as possible. But the players are the same, and they know that yesterday was a shocker. So at least I suppose as we will go right back to the start of the show, at least we didn't get beat. So I think on another day that most certainly could have been the case. And one of the things when people worry about screwing it up, this team's had opportunities, bigger opportunities to screw it up, and hasn't. As you mentioned there, that Motherwell game was one. Could have fallen apart after the League Cup and the criticism they got, won the next 9 games. Celtic at Ibrox was a game, if they lost that and put more or some petrol into Celtic's flag and title challenge, all of that thing. So no, I'm like you. I think a wee bit too early to be panicking just yet. Right, folks, thank you very much for joining Alex and I. Cammy will be back with you on Thursday for a full preview of the Kilmarnock game, and obviously we'll know a little bit more about who's likely to line up then. Until then, if you want to hear more from me and from Alex, who is the regular host of our preview show, an excellent show that goes in depth on all our Premier League opponents. So if you want to know exactly what Rangers will be facing at the weekend, I urge you to go to our Patreon site. It's heartandhand.com/Patreon, where from just $1.99 per month, you can get up to 5 shows every single day. We cover all things Rangers, cover current events, history, tactics, you name it, we cover it, and also a few other things as well to entertain you through lockdown. Alex, thank you so much for joining me. Always a pleasure, David. Thank you. My thanks to our executive producers in London, Mike Lee and Paul Myers. I'll be back with you next week. Until then, stay safe. Take care. Bye-bye.